Well, welcome and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Boyd, and I'm here to moderate a discussion with the irrepressible Professor Dr. Architect Jimmy Lim. But before we start, just a couple of housekeeping issues. Firstly, we are all, we all greatly benefit from this modern technology, which enables a discussion like this. But if you do find that you're having connection problems, look for a little button at the top of your screen in the center, just to the right of what looks like a pencil. And that is a start again button. So you reconnect by pushing that button. Hopefully that'll do the trick. Secondly, I'm going to fire the first few questions to Jimmy Lim, and then after about half an hour or so, we'll open the floor to a question and answer session. Now, the way to pose your questions is you look on the right-hand side of your screen and you'll see a vertical column of icons, starting with settings, then attendees, then chat. Okay, I hope you can see it. What you do is you press chat, and there you will see that you will be able to type in your questions, and they will be transmitted to me by WhatsApp. We only have 1 hour, maybe an hour plus. I can't guarantee that we can address every single question, but I will do my very best, and so will Professor Jimmy. Now, I also want at this stage to record Badan Warisan's thanks to Think City Institute, who've made this 1 hour possible. They've been very supportive of Badan, and we're very grateful to them. This is a CV for Professor Dr. Architect Jimmy Lim, who will come up on your screen very shortly. I'm not going to read it line for line, that's boring, but you will see that he has had an astounding career and has been founder member, of course, and vice president of Badan Warisan, past president of PAM, which is the Institute of Architects. And here's an interesting one, founding member and executive council member of the World Association of Chinese Architects. Jim was educated overseas in New South Wales, and I didn't write this, but whoever wrote it knows him very well, because they go on to say that his work is renowned and recognized for its uncompromising and unconventional, sustainable, equatorial tropical architecture. And I think that reflects Jim's character in one line. Uncompromising and unconventional, but more than that, he has taken on the challenge of introducing into modern buildings some highlights of vernacular architecture. And a lot of vernacular architecture, of course, is domestic architecture, and it's very hard to translate this into modern high-rises. There are only a handful of architects in the world, in my view, that have done this with any great success, and Jim is one of them. Jimmy's multiple awards include the PAM Gold Medal Award and the coveted Aga Khan Award for Architectural Excellence. And the building that won the Aga Khan Award, we will see a few slides of it later on. So please stay with us. And I would like to introduce Jimmy Lim. Can you, here he is. Welcome. Jim, do you mind if I address you as Jim?
Yes, of course.
We've only got an hour, and to include all your honorifics every time would probably take at least half an hour. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Firstly, of course, you're one of the founders of Badan Warisan, and that goes back to 1983. So can you tell us what were the main conservation issues at the time?
Well, at that time, Kuala Lumpur was sort of starting to develop, and a lot of buildings were being earmarked for demolition and redevelopment. I think the one project that started everyone very excited was the Court Hill, the court buildings on Maybank, where the Maybank building stand now. That was known as Bukit Mahkamah, where there was a series of old colonial buildings that housed the law courts. That was going to be demolished to be for the construction of the Maybank. So
Right.
that stirred a lot of interest. And also simultaneously at the same time, the Peninsula Hotel, which is now, or which was now for a long time, PAM building at Jalan Tangsi, was also earmarked for redevelopment. So these two projects really stirred a lot of people up.
Well, you stirred a lot of people up. I'm going to run a few slides now of the early days of Badan Warisan and the really impressive array of personalities and celebrities and business people that you managed to attract. Maybe you can tell me when you want to move on from slide to slide. Just give us a few comments on each one.
This slide is very important. I think the gentleman in front is Tan Sri Mubin Shepherd. Tan Sri Mubin Shepherd, we all know, was a retired civil servant with the British services. He stayed on in Malaya, and he was the one who advised Tunku Abdul Rahman for the setting up of the museum that we have. He was essentially a very well-read historian. He was a specialist in in understanding Malay folklores and Malay culture, arts and craft. He has written many books. So he helped in setting out the museum. And of course, during that period, when he saw what was going to happen to Kuala Lumpur, he got concerned, and he got a few people together, and we came. See, the lady on his left was Valerie Al-Bakri. She's the wife of the late Hisham Al-Bakri. And so we started this Badan Warisan together, a few people. Among the founders were Tan Sri Mubin Shepherd, the late Tan Sri Harun Hashim, Chen Bun Fee, and myself. The four of us were the founders. And with the first Badan Council was Tan Sri Abdullah, the one you just saw earlier on the right. Now he's on the left.
Yes.
Yes, he's the first president of Badan. After him was Tan Sri Harun Hashim for a short while, and then Pete Imran. The picture on he's on the right.
All right.
Over as president, and after many years, Pete decided that he wanted to concentrate his efforts elsewhere. Then Ahmad Saji, Tun Ahmad Saji took over.
Right.
Now the picture that we are seeing there is Pete Imran with Mubin Shepherd. I think this picture was taken at the handing over of the Istana Long from Kampung Raja in Terengganu. This old Istana was dismantled. We had a donation from Petronas for 100,000 ringgit. So this whole building was taken down and re-erected on the grounds of the State Museum in Kuala Terengganu. So I think this is at the opening. On Tan Sri Mubin's left is Raja Bahrain, the one with the beard, and then the next one is Ruslan Khalid, late Ruslan Khalid. He was an architect, and Ruslan was for a short time president of the Sahabat Warisan. And then on the extreme right is Chen Bun Fee, one of the founder members.
Yes.
Now, at one stage, you see, after we had Badan set up, Mobin, who was very good with management and things like that, restricted the number of membership of Badan out to a certain figure. I can't remember how many. Then he said, for us to expand, we have to set up the Sahabat. He said the Sahabat Warisan was to be modeled along the lines of the UMNO youth, so that if there's any issues that needs to be brought to public attention, we can send the Sahabat out to make noise. And of course, once the moment attract attention and get everybody all upset, Badan would come in and be the good guy. Say, oh, it's okay. We'll tell the youth to keep quiet and do that. So that was one of Mubin's. So
the moderating influence.
Yes. So the Sahabat was formed. Then after a while, they decided that we should now combine the Sahabat with the Badan, and that was the last picture that you saw with
Go back to it.
Alice Mogi.
Yes.
Is to say farewell Sahabat, hello Badan. So at that time, the Badan was expanded, the membership expanded to what it is today.
Right.
So hence that party, farewell Sahabat.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you. This was, I can tell you what this is. It was a fundraiser. And I was trying very hard to auction some Ilse Noor prints. Unfortunately, the lighting was such that all I could see was a lot of floodlights, and I couldn't see people raising their hands. Somehow we managed to sell quite a few of them that night.
Yes, those were the etchings that Ilse Noor made for a book sponsored by Shell. It was an etching whole collection. So those etchings were sold off as a set. But the original were auctioned off as what Chris
it was very generous of her to donate.
Yes, it was very good. It was wonderful. We had a lot of people helping Badan, helping the cause of conservation and heritage.
Yep. Including everybody in this picture in 1993.
Yeah. Well, you see, in this picture, you got Caesar Lung. Caesar played a very important role. Of course, Caesar would remember he was helping John Screen as a young lawyer then, preparing the constitution for Badan Warisan.
Yeah.
So this was at the farewell party.
We know this distinguished gentleman.
Okay, yes, that's right.
Maybe you could say something about this lineup, Jim.
Left to right, there's myself. There's Harun Hashim, the second president of Badan, and then the gentleman. Then there's Tun Ahmad Saji. I think this was at the inaugural. At that time, Tun Saji had just taken over, and the other members on the other side is there's John Cole. He's an architect. I think he's very active in MNS at the moment.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Then next to him is, oh my goodness, just slipped my mind the last one. He was a professor of architecture at University of Malaya. He was I cannot remember, the name slipped me. Then next to him is Parit Wadi, and the gentleman next to him, I think, is from the Jabatan Warisan.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure everybody wants to see a little more about some of the earlier successes of Badan Warisan architecturally and in terms of conservation. So maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about this slide.
Yeah. Now, you see, in the early days, Badan had to depend on a lot of donations and things like that. But then, of course, you can talk about conservation, but you need to show examples of what you can do on what's the end result. So the first project that we undertook was the Gedong Raja Abdullah. Now, this old Gedong for many years was used by the police in Klang. In fact, when we went to look at this place, we were told that this building, which was an old stone structure, masonry structure, but then the outside was all timber, that it was used for retaining a lot of prisoners and used for interrogation and what have you. But anyway, yeah. So the police were going to tear this building down because they needed some badminton courts. They wanted 4 badminton courts to be placed here. So Tan Sri Mubin intervened. He went to see the director of museum, Datuk Sharum. And Datuk Sharum said that, well, the only person who can intervene in this thing was to see the Sultan of Selangor. And Tan Sri Mubin Shepherd and Valerie Al-Bakri both went to see the Sultan and got the approval of Sultan for this building to preserve. And based on that, that building was preserved. So that was it. Now, there were a lot of drawings of sort of a kind of recreated history of what the place looked like. The drawings were done by Long Chen Shi, and a lot of the arrangement of the interior exhibition were done by Waveney Jenkins.
All right.
So that was what it was.
So from what you're saying, I get the feeling that thanks to Badan, largely, there was a sort of a growing awareness of the value of conservation, even though it must have been an uphill battle.
Yes, it was at that time. But what was encouraging for us to go on, although we were very young and we didn't have any funds, was the fact that people were enthusiastic. I mean, for example, Shell Malaysia coming up with 30,000 for Elsinore to do the book, you know, on lessons, right, and that sort of thing. And then we had the ESO Malaysia coming up with some funds to bring in a group of opera singers for the performance. We had this huge opera performance called Così fan tutti that was in the Petaling Jaya center, you know, and it was a success. So things like that. We had lots of people coming in to give us support. So this building was saved, and the money from Così fan tutti pardon me, went towards a lot of other activities.
Right. But despite these early successes, there were still some failures, of course. Do you want to tell us about this one?
Oh, well, I know. I would not call this failures. I would say that now that the little article, How Not to Do Conservation, is really a case of the people, they wanted to do something. They want to get involved, but they didn't know how to go about conservation. So they went about the wrong way. And as a result, the vital things about conservation were lost. So therefore, we had to come out and say, well, next time, if you want to do this, you don't do what you did.
Don't do this. But the left-hand side image is the old Eastern Hotel.
Yes. Now, you see, on the left-hand side is the Eastern Hotel. Eastern Hotel, in those days, was the main sort of a social activity area before independence. And that building was where Tunku Abdul Rahman, after he came back from London, having secured the British colonial authorities to agree to give Malaysia the independence, that it was announced there. So this building had a very important meaning. So we were trying to preserve it. But of course, the Eastern Hotel belonged to the Koo family in those days, and the Koo family wanted to sell this and split it up among the 3 family members. So what happened is, at that time, whilst we were trying to do certain things, the local the owners sent in the bulldozer over the weekend. It was a long weekend, and they bulldozed the whole thing down. And when we made a lot of noise at that time, I still remember Wolf Kilman, one of our very enthusiastic member who was attached to FRIM, went there. We all went to see Elias Omar. So Elias Omar was quoted in the newspaper and saying, "Oh, I didn't know. On Monday when I came back to work, I look out my window and the building is gone." So anyway,
Yeah.
I think, if I remember correctly, as a gesture of support and sincerity, I think the developers who demolished this contributed a certain sum of money to Badan. Say that, okay, use this money
Right.
for conservation. So these are the nice things that happen.
Yep, they're not entirely bad. Let's have a look again at some of the early success stories of Badan. Could you take us through these?
Now, this is again Klang. You see, because of the enthusiasm and the success of the Gedong, the YDP of the Klang Council at that time was Encik Ahmad Isnan, said, "Oh, what can we do with the police contingent building?" Because this building was a lovely old colonial. In fact, this type of building, there are quite a few of the same design built. I think there's still one up in where is it? South of Ipoh, on the way on highway. What's the place called? Anyway, never mind. Anyway, there are a few of them. Now they were all in quite good condition. All the police did was put in some louvers and paint the thing green. So
Green or blue?
No, blue. Sorry.
Yeah.
No. Sorry. Talking about green. Why I thought green is because when the Sultan said, "Okay, Gedong can be preserved," Sharum gave instruction to one of his men. I still remember his name was Encik Paiman. He said, "Paiman, please look after the building. It's going to preserve, clean it up, and all that, and make it look decent."
Yeah.
At the next visit we went with Tan Sri Mubin Shepherd, Valerie Al-Bakri, all the pillars on the ground floor were painted green. We were horrified.
It was well intentioned, I'm sure.
Yeah, he was in here. And when Mubin sort of told him, "Oh, that's not what we want," poor Kaiman felt very bad.
I think you'll agree that buildings deserving conservation don't have to be beautiful, but this building is particularly beautiful.
It's very majestic. It's so majestic, and actually we have quite a few more of this in the smaller towns.
Yes.
And this is something which Badan could set about having a look at it. I think we are at this stage of our development in the country where we are not short of funds. We are not poor. Back in those days, you're talking about 1985, relatively, we were not so wealthy, but today we are much wealthier.
Yeah.
And I think the museum, the Warisan department, and the local authorities and the public works should consider putting some money aside to preserve this heritage for our future.
Good idea. And of course, it's not just about preserving old colonial buildings, is it?
No. Now you see that this whole interest about preserving old building caught the attention of the Sultan of Johor. You see, Sultan of Johor she's the patron of a ladies group called MAWA. MAWA is the acronym for the Majlis Wanita Johor. That's why it says so. That's Majlis Wanita Johor becomes MAWA. So they have this big piece of property at Jalan Sungai Chat in Johor Bahru, and on it was an old building. Nothing spectacular, but it's a masonry building which belonged to the one of the members of our family. So the Sultana wanted to do something with this piece of land. I think it was about 7 acres. So we came up with the idea of going around the whole of Johor to look for these old abandoned Malay houses. And then we can buy off the owners if they don't want it, if they are prepared to sell, or if they don't want it, we will take it down, bring this thing and re-erect. So those two pictures of the Malay houses on the left of the screen were the type of buildings we had identified, right? And then the sketch which you see at the back, I'm sorry, it's not very clear, indicated how each of these buildings would be a sort of, located on the sloping side, and there'll be walkways connected. So the ladies on Mawa would do things to it and really make this into a very vibrant center. I mean, this was in 1987 or 88, This is a very advanced idea. And the Sultanah was all for that. So as the project moved on, suddenly there's a change in the committee, like in anything. So we got new members who came into Mawa, and they went to see the Sultanah and said, "Oh, Tuanku, ada hantu, jangan." So they all got scared.
How many times do you hear that? Yeah.
So the Sultanah said, "Oh, you mean these houses are hantu, is it?" So they abandoned the idea. So we only built a few buildings on this site.
But despite all these early physical examples, you must have come to realize very early on that the conservation movement depends very heavily on the very arduous task of education and awareness. Sure, you can have your iconic, examples of what conservation can do, but it's changing people's attitudes. That is important. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Is it still a problem, do you think?
Sorry?
Is it still the case?
Actually, there are lots of people who are very, very keen with conservation today. I would say that we've got much more following about what conservation should be, especially among the young people. But unfortunately, in today's world, the emphasis is not what we want to preserve for the future, for our benefits, but if I preserve it, what's in it for me? What do I get out of this? So it all comes down to what's my cut in how to do conservation. And that becomes a big issue. And because our sense of responsibility, our sense of well-being is no longer about caring for our heritage, our tradition, our fellow human beings, our future generation, but it's how much money I can put into my pocket. That's our Malaysian culture today.
Well, I think in line with that, I'm not sure it's the same problem, but Badan, after a lot of lobbying, managed to get a Heritage Conservation Act passed in 1991. And this act, as I'm sure you're aware, enabled state planners in every state to identify places and buildings of historic and heritage importance and gazette them. And yet somehow this has been, the states, most of the state governments have been very slow to pick up on this. Do you want to comment on that?
See, all we have to do is we take Penang, for example. When Penang was awarded the UNESCO World Heritage Site status, it took the people in Penang a long time to understand what conservation, what heritage was. So there was still a lot of devastation. But of course, prior to that, the Rent Control Act was lifted in Penang, and a large part of Penang, the urban villages of Penang, have all become deserted, and a lot of the people have moved out, and a lot of the buildings are fallen into disrepair. So in a way, the UNESCO citation had helped preserve Penang, and I'm sure Malacca the same thing. Now, having said that, I don't think the government understand what this whole conservation is all about. Now, it took a long time for this message to get through, to filter into the mindset of the people running the state, administering, to realize that preserving heritage is important. Because way after the UNESCO citation for Penang, a lot of buildings were still allowed to be demolished and, you know, devastated. Now, all, you know, that's a sound.
Sorry, it's just some rain. Keep going.
You can hear, all right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, a case in point is like, say, if you take Tasik Chini in Pahang, right? It has also got a UNESCO citation. But look at the devastation that's gone on around that. So I think what is very important is we must have a mindset. Yes, we can have all the enactment and what have you, but the real love for our heritage, our environment is very important. You know, we can't get our heritage from anywhere. Right? It's only what it is. Once we lose it, we have got it. We can't get it back.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think Badan has come to recognize the power of the media now. You know, I remember when Bock House was being demolished, the press really wasn't that interested, and we just had to stand by. It was so painful, and watch this beautiful Le Coq d'Or restaurant being demolished. But a couple of years later, we were asked by the owners of Coliseum Cinema in Tunku Abdul Rahman if we could help him, because the cinema had been gazetted for compulsory acquisition. In fact, it was a good case. It was a Section 8 acquisition notice, which means no more argument. And the only thing we could do is to try and use the power of the press. And what I think the clincher was a very impactful photo on the front page of the Star, and some very punchy headline. And I'm willing to bet that some people in government saw this and decided to do a complete U-turn, which to me was, and I know, I'd like to know how you feel about it. It was a kind of a turning point when Badan began to realize that the power of the media is absolutely imperative.
No, the power of the media is always an important thing, and we have to be friendly with the media. I'm glad you mentioned that the Colosseum was saved. Oh, I mean, although I was in the early days very much in Badan, of course I have to set aside and let the younger people run the Badan. Now, I mean, for example, a more recent demolition is the Ampang complex. The Ampang complex, the first full-time modern shopping complex in Kuala Lumpur, which was built in I think that was built about 1971. You know, from 71 until now, you are looking at almost 45 years. Now, that building is worthy of conservation. The other building where we did not say anything or nothing was brought is the Pudu jail. Now, Pudu jail, sections of the wall should have been preserved regardless of what the development was going on. But there was no genuine attempt. And the other one, of course, is the Bock House. The Bock House was a classical architecture of that period. You know, now these three buildings were lost without Badan saying a single thing. So it's a pity, but never mind. We learn from here. I hope from now on there will be more reaction from Badan towards a lot of the
more public awareness. But you've touched on a very interesting subject there, Jim, which is what exactly should be preserved. And I'm sure you would say that it's not just beautiful looking old buildings. Do you think Badan Warisan's remit covers the protection of green lungs in the city, for example. For example, Federal Hill in KL. Is that something that Badan Warisan should be concerned about?
Well, I think if you go back into the constitution of Badan, and I think Caesar can verify that it doesn't only include buildings. It includes buildings, places, the environment. You could have a very old ancient tree, that ought to be. Recently, there was one tree that was logged in Terengganu, a 500-year-old tree. The picture was splashed on it. I mean, that tree should have never been touched.
Yeah.
Right? And rivers and things like that. So there are lots of things. See, for example, you talk about rivers. The river at the site of the Kek Lok Si temple in Penang, right? At the bottom of where the Air Hitam Dam is, the rock formation, the number of trees, the streams and all that were blasted away by the temple, and the Penang authorities allowed them to do that, And what did they do? They destroyed this beautiful landscape to make a car park. I mean, this is travesty. But does the state government care about things like that? They didn't care about things like that.
Mm.
So
sorry.
It covers a lot of things. Like, okay, you mentioned what's his name? Federal Hill. Of course, there are lots of green lungs up there. Jalan Negeri Sembilan, Jalan Johor, Jalan Kelantan, and all that. That whole network is an amazing study in urban planning.
Yes.
The way it connects itself through, the way the roads have been designed. You talk about engineering, where today all engineers do is they design roads that are straight. Engineers seem to have forgotten how to design roads that goes around the landscape. But up at Federal Hill, all the roads are following the environment, the contours and what have you. And at the little roundabout, there was a little old structure. I think it was a shop or something before, or a post office.
Yeah, something.
A delightful place, I remember when my daughter was 6 years old, I used to drive her from Taman Sebuteh to the Calvary Church kindergarten. Then I used to drive through this whole area all the way, and I was thinking to myself, it's a beautiful place.
Just coming back to you, Jim, you personally, I mean, you've taken conservation to the nth degree by recognizing really important features of vernacular architecture and building them into modern houses and other buildings.
Yes.
And I just wanted, I took the liberty of pulling out a few slides of some of your past residential work. I was wondering if you could take us through those.
This is the Salinger's house, all built in timber, and it took us 6 years to build this thing because we had a craftsman who was from Kelantan. He went into the forest to select the chengao trees that he wanted. He cut them down, he brought them down to KL or to Bangi, where this house was being built. And this carpenter is a fantastic guy. Now, the way his life was, I think, is something we could emulate. With the COVID-19, a lot of lessons has come back. We have to stop doing one job a day. We should make sure that we do 3 jobs, just like this guy. He's a carpenter. He's a heady farmer, right? And he's also a fisherman. So the reason why this house took 6 years to build, during the planting season and the harvesting season, he had to be back in Kelantan. So work stops on the site. Then when the season's over, everything's done, he comes down and he works here for a few months. And that's why it took so long.
Can we see some more pictures? Some more pictures.
Yeah, there are 4 pictures. And when we first designed this house, the plan of the house is a triangular shaped plan, not the regular rectilinear Malay house. So when the drawings were shown to him, the person who's contacted him said, "Hey, Adam, this is a very funny shaped house. Can you do it?" And you know, the spirit, the determination of this gentleman was, if the architect can draw it, I can build it. Now, that is the sort of spirit which we got to start to instill into our Malaysian people.
Yes.
Never say die.
Never say die.
Absolutely, you know. So this building, we try to capture all the essential elements of what tropical vernacular living can be. Is a house on stilts, because you know the traditional way of building house on stilts is a fantastic way of, it's the most environmental friendly. You don't touch the ground, you don't cut any earth, you don't disturb the water runoff. The ground is natural. So if it rains, the water just continues to run the way it has been for centuries. But what do people do today? Every time, first thing they do, they level the site. They do everything and they build the house right onto the ground. In the tropics, we want to be above the ground so that you get movement of air through.
Yeah, understood.
And see, the irony of it all is that I'll tell you an example. If any of you have ever been to the Sentosa Island in Singapore, which is the most expensive piece of real estate, you know, when you drive into Sentosa, you are not aware that you are by the sea, because every house is built right up to the side boundary, cheek by jowl, and you cannot see through. You don't even know behind the sea. You see, now this is called sensitivity to the environment. The local authorities should have insisted that all the buildings must be raised above the ground so that you continue to have the visual connectivity from land to the sea. After all, that's why you go to Sentosa Island, isn't it?
Yep.
You go to Sentosa downtown.
Yeah.
Right? Now, this is the sort of things. Now, these are some nice interior pictures of the Salinger's house, where you can see that there's no ukiran, nothing there, but the elements give you a sense of the traditional architecture, right? That's very important. So we're using the structure to create the language. The structure is made. This is not Salinger's. This is another house. We use detailing to create elements to suggest the natural environment, the branches of trees, the leaves, and so forth. There's another house, the Snyder House in Bangsa, and again, say it's raised on stilt. You can feel the air going through. You know, the visual connectivity. I think these are the sort of elements we want to retain in our modern architecture. Why do you want to have concrete structures, heavy, right? And concrete is so hot. You know, these houses, you just live there, you know, and that's it. Yeah, so these are just some views of it.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, well, our timber is fantastic, and that's what it's all about.
Thanks, Jim. Really indebted to you. Time has come for us to throw open questions from the house. I have one or two. Here's a question for you to kick off with. And please, I encourage everybody to to type in your questions. We've got a few minutes in hand. How can we get the government at all levels to understand the issues and to prioritize our historical assets?
That is a very, very difficult question, especially in the current culture in Malaysia. Sad to say, probably the only thing that would induce them is to say, money.
Money.
Money. Money.
Is it really money? I mean,
you know,
surely the mindset, and I think it's maybe it's a Southeast Asian thing. The mindset is to strut your stuff with the biggest and the highest buildings, if not in the world, in the region. And for most people, I mean, we've been led to believe that these all signify progress. But if you were to go to, say, London or Paris, you don't go to look at high buildings, do you?
No.
So why, you know, how is it a cultural thing, or can you explain that difference in approach?
No, I think it's a question you cannot answer. And if you answer or try to, you offend a lot of people, really. And yeah, I mean, you know, people come to Malaysia to look at what? They come here to look at your banana trees. They come here to look at your coconut trees. They come here to look at pineapple trees. You know, just our flora itself is a fascination. But our own people don't think so. They would prefer to buy strawberries from Japan at 35 pounds one strawberry. You know, that sort of thing, because that's the in thing, right? So that's it. But I hope with this current COVID-19, a lot of people would have a serious mindset to realize that money is not everything. Money, yes, your good friend invite you for a party. You go for a party. Next thing is 7 days later, you've got COVID-19, and 14 days, you are dead. All the money you have in the world is not going to do anything for you. I think this is the point that's gotten through. And I am really praying that Malaysians begin to think about what quality of life means, what appreciating what God has given us means, not just the money.
Another question here, how can we harmonize conservation with the modernization of the city? Is there any advice you can provide to the youth on how we can maintain this harmony of development and conservation together?
Well, you know, I think that is going to happen because a lot of our young people today seem to be searching for anything that has to do with history. Now, all you have to look at is typing, right? Do you know, over the weekend, there are lots of people going to typing, and these are just the ordinary folks. Now, if the local authorities could make typing a little bit more people-friendly, and not that typing is not typing, is actually one of the most people-friendly city in Malaysia. So you got typing. Ipoh is the same thing. Lots of people are going to Ipoh for the food, for the old architecture, and young people they love it to take pictures in front of any things that has been accepted. And I think this is the thrust. The more we can get people together, this is where Badan should be trying to get more young people to come out and be part of this movement. And I think after this COVID-19, we need a new thrust, a new drive.
Yeah. So, how, another question, how do you get the government at all levels to understand the issues and prioritize historical assets?
That's a good question.
Well, perhaps a better question, a modification of that question is, how do you get property developers to recognize the value of heritage structures?
I think for a start, I've been very cynical and being a little bit cheeky. I think first thing is let's get our royalties to understand the importance of heritage, because the royalties are part of heritage. Now, if you don't get the people to respect and recognize heritage, eventually you are going to be your own what do you call demise. Nobody wants anything of heritage. So if you can instill sense of heritage from townwards, then in the meantime, our education program goes through a different program. All the education in high school and universities are reformatted, reset to be in the positive direction. Then I think in 30 years' time, we have got a chance.
So you're still optimistic?
Oh, yeah.
Public opinion can be swayed. Yeah. What do you think is the role of young people, Jim, to support the work of Badan and the heritage movement generally? How can they help?
I think, first of all, join Badan. Get in there and get in the activities which this new council is trying to organize for the young people, right? And also, what is very important, if you see anything that is relevant to heritage, bring it to the attention of Badan. Hey, that's a nice old house. Hey, that's a nice old pondok. Hey, that's a nice WACA. There's a lovely old tree, that needs to be preserved. Oh, there's a river, things like that. So the more participation we have collection, then that's very important. When that happens, so then Badan can follow up on this thing. Then more people join in, then we become a wholesome thing. I think I'm not sure how many members we have in Badan today, but I think the number should increase more, right?
Badan made a conscious decision to focus on harnessing the power of the media to increase awareness of the conservation movement. Do you think they're on the right track?
I think the media is a very important media, right? Because they are there, they are waiting for news. So if you are able to generate news, then they are happy. Now, the trouble is, if you don't generate news or create anything of interest, they've got nothing to write about. So if you have something exciting, some events, some activities, you call a press conference, have a press kit with everything written out and all the pictures and what have you. So every one of them takes a press kit, they go off, they look at the thing and they retype the whole thing, or if there's a diskette or USB, they just download and they rehash it and off they go. You see, you must make things very easy for the press. I know when I was president of PAM, I used to have a lot of press conference and things like that. And also, when I was in Penang, I was instrumental in setting up the Penang Citizens Awareness Chant Group, commonly known as Chant. So a lot of people thought that we were a religious group. Oh, you people are a religious group, is it? I said, no, we are not religious. Oh, but why you chant? I said, well, you know why we chant? You know, when you pray to God, you chant your prayers, your desire, your success story. Does God ever answer your prayers, your chant? None. So similarly, when you pray to your request, your politicians to help this, help that, do they ever help you? None. So we are a chant group. We only chant in anticipation, not that we are action group. We are not.
I'm going to give you three questions in one. One is, I'm sure as a practicing heritage architect, you've seen there is an increasing shortage of skilled craftsmen. Do you see any ways of addressing that? Secondly, do you think, is there any possibility of getting a conservation, what can we say, a building code for conservation?
A what?
A building code. In other words, a reference that where you can see what are different materials, paint, timber, and so forth. And how do we, third part of the question, how do we get developers to integrate heritage conservation plans and awareness in their sustainability plans?
Okay, is that it?
Yeah, that's it. You mentioned to me the tendency to flatten everything, even the prospective parks, whereas that is greenery that should be left undisturbed.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the first part, the lack of craftsmen, well, it's always a chicken and egg situation, right? You have craftsmen first, and then you have the job of sort of. Important thing is, if you're going to do conservation, you must know how and what it is that you want to be built, right? So you work out the detailing, you work out the connections, etc. Then you get the normal craftsman to transform what you have designed into reality. So after you've done a few of these projects, the same craftsman will know how to do your design, and that in itself can be considered as crafts.
Yes.
Okay. Now, second thing, I think having a conservation guideline is a good idea, but then it's something that's not going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult because different people have got different standards of conservation. Right? I mean, it's a standard. So what standard of work should it be, up here or down there? Yeah. So, so the guideline for conservation has to be very wide and very generous with a lot of leeway. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the third point about integrating heritage and conservation in with a developer's project. Now, this is a social responsibility of the designer. If you have a client who has taken over a project that has certain conservation heritage value, then you must try your level best to explain to him and see how you can create a design that maximize and take advantage of the heritage elements so that it does not affect his ROI. Most developers are only interested in the ROI, which is return on investment. That's the thing.
Well, talking about return on investment, I think there is a common belief that conservation is all about tourism, which I think is probably quite misleading. What's your view on that?
No, conservation is not about tourism. Conservation is about our own preservation, right? Now, you see the Balinese. A lot of people misread the Balinese. The Balinese do conservation and heritage as part of their religious beliefs, as part of their rituals of tradition, their customs. And because they celebrate their customs and rituals, now everybody say, wow, isn't it fantastic? I like to come and take photograph of the funeral, the burning of the sarcophagus and all that. But then they did not do that for the tourists. Yeah? So a lot of people mistake that point. Now, the Balinese did not say we are going to do carving so that tourists will come and buy. They want to do carving because that's my calling. God has made me to give me the skill to be able to do the lovely carving of maidens dancing, and that sort of thing, or carving of beautiful flora and things like that, or you were made by God to be an architect. So if you're an architect, what is your religion, my friend? My religion is architecture. I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not a Catholic. My religion is architecture. Why? By doing architecture, I'm fulfilling the wishes of the Creator, because I'm like a computer. He's made this computer with all these motherboards, with all these RAMs and what have you, and he's downloaded the software for architecture to be able to create spaces and what have you. So if the computer that has got all this software tries to do a what's a BY, do your own maths and things like, or do maths, you can't. So we must know that. So people ask me, what's your religion, Jim? I say, architecture. So,
Yeah. All right. It helps, but I think preservation of old buildings will always help tourism, but it should be.
It's a byproduct.
Yeah,
it's a byproduct of your lifestyle.
Off-spin.
Yeah.
Jim, we're really indebted to you for this afternoon's session. I've learned a lot, and I hope everybody has thoroughly enjoyed an hour with Professor Dr. Jimmy Lim. We are 5:05. Our time is coming very close to an end. On behalf of Badan Warisan and on behalf of Think City, I'd like to express our sincere thanks for your valuable time and really interesting discourse. Thank you very much indeed. For the audience out there, don't go away just yet. We've got a couple of slides to run, but we'll let Jimmy Lim take a well-deserved rest.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Pleasure, Chris.
These are really the last couple of slides. We just want to say that membership of Badan Warisan is an enriching experience. It's not expensive, and it is open to all. I've been a member for a long, long time, and some of the best times I've had, I must say, is on trips organized by Badan Warisan and talks. And just learning, it just opens up a new dimension. So do encourage everybody to become a member. It's extremely easy. Also, I have to say, this is a small appeal for any donations. You may not know much about the finances of Badan Warisan. I do. They operate on a minimal budget. Much of the work that is done is on a completely voluntary basis. You don't, what can I say? It's there've been times when they've, like now, when they really struggle financially. So if you could open your heart and open your wallet and give whatever size of donation, it would be very, very well received. And on top of that, it is tax deductible. Badan Warisan is one of the few organizations of its type that has official tax deductibility. And they will give you a receipt which you can then submit with your annual income tax return. So thank you very much for being with us for the hour. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your attention. And we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.